We interrupt your regularly scheduled YouTube viewing to report that if Kodak dies, so does film photography. So you'll pay those price increases and lock it. A few months ago, us film photographers woke up to some rather unpleasant news. Kodak, not the rapper, decided it was time that we pay a little more for those magical light papers. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I don't think that we should be mad at Kodak. In fact, I think it's time all of us film photographers looked at Kodak and gave them a big thank you. According to Wikipedia, there were 22 companies still making film in 2022, and don't at me if that number's wrong. And we know that some of those are dirty cheaters and they are actually rebranding other people's film as their own, and I'm obviously joking. I buy a lot of that kind of stuff, the repackaged stuff. I love it, but in reality, there are folks that are doing that. So even though there are like 20-something manufacturers, a lot of those aren't actually coding their own film. And it just happens that Kodak is one of those companies. Like Hulk Hogan, they've been around for most of our lives. Just like Hulk Hogan, in recent years, the company has definitely seen some better days. You know, minus the racism. Before we talk too much about Kodak though, it's time we look at Kodak's Japanese twin, Fujifilm. While Kodak has been around since the 1800s, Fuji didn't come around until a little later in the 1930s. But since Kodak was the OG, Fuji had a lot of catching up to do. Early on, Fujifilm operated successfully out of Japan, as their name would imply, Fuji. But they had a hard time breaking into the land of hot dogs, bald eagles, and Guy Fieri's. That wasn't until 1984, because that was an Olympic year. Kodak decided that they weren't interested in watching the Americans roll face at the Olympics, so they declined to be a title sponsor that year. That was just the opening that Fuji needed. They became the title sponsor of the event that year, and it helped them make inroads into the United States. They also successfully opened a plant in South Carolina, which brought a lot of their manufacturing to the United States, lowered their costs, and they were able to sell film much cheaper than they had been able to. Anyway, these two moves helped Fuji get a foothold in the good old red, white, and blue. Fuji and Kodak were now the top two major players in the global film market at the time. Obviously, there were some other dudes making film, but these two were the daddies. As the decade went on though, both companies would wake up to a big monster flaming fudge bag on their porch. That's right, digital cameras. And believe it or not, both of these companies had known this day would come for many years. In fact, in 1975, just as Greg Brady was hooking up with his TV mom behind the scenes, a Kodak engineer named Steve Sasson had invented the first digital camera. Steve took that design to the Kodak brass, and then Kodak looked at him and said, "Yo dog, that's dope, but we're gonna need you to keep this a secret." It was called filmless photography at the time, and you see, there's the problem. Filmless photography is as useless as a snooze button on a smoke alarm if you sell film. If you want to know more about Kodak's foray into digital cameras, then too bad, this ain't the video for you. So both of these companies were well aware that there was a monster disruptive technology barreling towards them in a few years, and the companies were seeing massive success film sales at the time. They turned their attention to how best to move forward. They both began investing their resources in other products to try to be ready for the shift. While Fujifilm had been investing their money in other business opportunities, digital cameras, future instant film releases, Kodak had been investing in, I don't know, hookers and blow. I guess they did have those easy share point and shoots for a while, and so I guess that was something. But either way, it was a tough time to be a film manufacturer as folks moved over in droves to digital, you know, to say nothing of the little smartphone technology that would be coming right around the corner. Those challenging market conditions obviously led to some tough choices having to be made by both of these companies. Like, do we give our CEOs $1 million bonuses? Or $10 million bonuses. It must have been so brutal. Anyway, bit by bit, both companies have sucked the joy out of our lives by both periodically discontinuing integral parts of their film lineup. But one of them, Fuji, has been doing it a lot more than the other. In my mind, nobody has done more to curb the resurgence of professional film than Fuji. Astia, Pro 400H, and recently Velvia 100 to name a few. And these are not their crappy, unpopular films. In the case of Pro 400H, entire wedding photography businesses have built on the Pro 400H film stock. If you need more information on that, eBay search the Contact 645 prices, and that will tell you all you need to know. But maybe they'll be going down now that Pro 400H has been discontinued. I could be wrong, but I just get this feeling that Fuji has no interest being a player in the professional film market anymore. I guess that's okay. My parents didn't want me either. The challenge for both of these companies was scalability, but not in the traditional sense. It's actually the reverse. Trippy. These companies turned into giant corporate monsters selling photographic film over the 20th century. Kodak was even a Dow component for the longest time and actually made it to the 5th largest company in the world. Well, things get a lot more difficult for you when you're ranked 966 versus 5th. Film had fallen from something used by soccer moms and professional photographers alike all over the world to the de facto choice of every aging hipster. Imagine you're able to make 1 million Hot Pockets an hour on your machines, but suddenly pizza rolls come out and the demand for Hot Pockets drops to 5% of your previous volumes. You won't even likely be able to operate your machinery in a cost-effective manner to even make Hot Pockets anymore because everybody's eating pizza rolls. And as a result, Hot Pockets get discontinued. A tragedy for those of us who still like Hot Pockets, and who doesn't. So that's the reality of the situation here. These film companies have a ton of infrastructure set up to produce millions and millions and millions of rolls of film, which is fantastic, except for the demand has now slipped to where they only need thousands and thousands and thousands of rolls of film. Kodak is attempting to transition into that, but the transition is a bit like going from Yeezus to Jesus is King for Kanye West. That's to say, jarring. The red and gold, the real American, Kodak on the other hand, still maintains a good deal of its film portfolio, and even brought one back, Ektachrome 100. Woo! Big Hulk Hogan energy. And get this, they've also stated that they want to bring back other film stocks, so that's super, super cool. I kid you not, I'm gonna be happier than a fat kid at Shoney's if I get to shoot a roll of Kodachrome 64. I think we should bring back Kodachrome and Shoney's. That buffet was dope. I know Kodachrome requires special developers, and don't at me. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Fuji is developing another Instax camera that will suck just as bad as the last one. Not an Instax fan, by the way. Ranted about that in another video if you're interested. If you go into your local photography store, assuming that you live in a place bougie enough to have one, the shelves are likely to be stocked with Ilford and Kodak products, at least in my experience. Even though Fuji hasn't exited the game completely, they might as well have, because you can't find their dumb Shrek-colored boxes anywhere. Other than a box of that Superior 400 that you're likely to find at Walmart, which, psst, might actually be made by Kodak now. When's the last time you've been out and saw a roll of Velvia floating in the wild? The way this video is going, it probably sounds like I'm being a little harsh on Fujifilm from the land of the rising sun, but I've had a box of Velvia 50 and 120 on order for the longest time, and no sign of getting it anytime soon. I love their stuff. Velvia is great, Provia is fantastic, and Acros might be my favorite black and white film of all time. These are wonderful film stocks, but Fuji clearly doesn't support us photographers, unless you consider Instax film photography film. My daughter's making faces at me. She loves Instax, right? What do we think about Instax?
I love it.
It's get out of here. It's no good.
But I do. I love it.
I know.
I have a camera.
No. It was a really fun for folks to do for a few weeks to make videos crushing Kodak for raising their prices. And I get it. I totally get it. It's not fun to pay more for something that you were already getting at a fixed rate. But Kodak is trying to run a business. That's not to say that the business is being ran well by any stretch. I think Kodak, it's been well documented they've had their share of problems, but they are trying to run a business and they haven't deserted us. Getting that right, wedding photographers, with your Pro 400H. I think kind of the stark, depressing thing that I learned making this film was that the only color negative film still being made, we believe at this point, is Kodak. We're one manufacturer stopping making color negative film, and C41 color negative film is gone forever. So when Kodak goes, everything goes. The professional photographic film industry as a whole will be just as over as Katherine Heigl's movie career. The market will be left with Fuji, who is just as committed to professional film as I was to my girlfriend in the 5th grade. At that point, I hope you guys enjoy black and white everything, because it will be the old stoic Ilford still remaining, and that's all that's going to be left. And I think it's critical. That we support the companies who are supporting film at this point. I mean, let me know in the comments if you guys know anyone else that's coding color negative film still. To my knowledge, it's only Kodak, and everything is derivative of that. Fuji actually stated in 2018 that they were discontinuing all color negative film products, and Kodak has demonstrated time and time again that they are bent on trying to run a profitable photographic film company, and they are attempting to hold the line for photographers all around the world. By continuing to release new emulsions, securing agreements with movie studios to continue the purchase of cinematic film, Kodak has reassured us analog heads that film will be with us far into the future, and I'm thankful for that. So the next time that you're torn between a roll of Ektachrome and Provia, remember who's got your back. Thanks, Kodak. Or should we call you Brodak? We interrupt your regularly. I'm such a hillbilly.
See the Brownie Starmite camera by Kodak. It costs less than $12, and start now to enjoy your good times over again in pictures.